Hello, my dear students. In the wake of coronavirus, we cannot go for, we cannot go for the virtual classroom teaching learning mechanisms. So we are making this effort in terms of preparing some slides and try to analyze so that they could able to understand something on this US hegemony. So we have already completed our the discussion in terms of the world order regarding unipolarity, multipolarity, new the world order, new global order, and many more things. In this particular lecture, basically I'd like to express my views on this US hegemony, means how the United States of America became successful in hegemonizing the entire 20th century. So at the very beginning, we start with our discussions with the concept of hegemony. So this is the very term, this hegemony is basically signifies it is a kind of a supreme power with the help of which you can dominate, you can hegemonize, you can suppress, you can compel others to do certain things in favor of your own interest. So from political theory viewpoint, the very idea of hegemony is something different, and from international relation perspective, the hegemony is also something different. But the core idea is similar. The very idea of this hegemony, or the basic meaning of hegemony, is same, whether it's political theory or this international relations. In your theories, political theory, you have already gone through this Antonio Gramsci's version of this hegemony. Maybe or may not be, but from this international relation perspective, the hegemony is basically identified in terms of practicabilities, how the hegemonic behavior can be applied in international politics by the nation state. Here are discussions basically revolving around the characters of the nation state, how nation state behave in a very hegemonic way in international forums, in international affairs, by practicing some sort of policies, rules, regulations, or their activities in favor of them by binding some other countries, by compelling some other countries. And this United States of America's viewpoint, the very idea of hegemony was very much significant. Basically, in the entire 20th century, this United States of America hegemonized the entire world through three different ways of hegemony. This America's version of this hegemony can be analyzed as hegemony as soft power, hegemony as hard power, and hegemony as structural power. So in the entire 20th century, this United States of America practiced this hegemonic behavior. They shows their hegemonic characters in this three way. Sometimes by applying some soft power techniques, sometimes by applying some hard power techniques, and sometimes by putting emphasis upon some sort of structural arrangement programs, or developing the structural capacity of a particular nation state. So we had a lot of examples how this United States of America hegemonized the anti-war, how United States of America compelled the anti-war, how sometimes by applying soft power techniques, sometimes hard power, sometimes structurally. At first, from structural viewpoint, this United States of America in most occasions they helped a lot. They helped a lot of countries in terms of development of their structural capacity, specifically in the post-World War phenomena. Uh, More specifically in the context of this, European countries, the entire European economy gets collapsed after the Second World War. So this United States of America tries the level base to develop, these economic competencies of these European countries, and this United States of America's behavior during that period towards this Western Hemisphere. And then again, by applying different policies like, this Marshall Plan, these are nothing but some sort of, America's hegemony in terms of structural power. Then we have this soft power and hard power. This is something relative term. This both soft power and hard power, hegemony as soft power and hegemony as hard power, is something and a relative term. Sometimes, United States of America try to help some sort of nations, by aiding and assisting, in that sense, sometimes there are some sort of conditionalities as well, isn't it? There are some sort of conditionalities as well, and sometimes, there are some sort of threat perceptions as well. So if there's a conditionalities or some sort of aid and assistance programs, that can be considered as a hegemony as soft power. And if there are some sort of threat perceptions against the nations, in that context it can be considered as hegemony as hard power. So in the entire 20th century, by applying different plans, policies, the techniques, this United States of America became successful in hegemonizing the entire world, and they prove it. That's they prove it only after the breakdown of USSR. So in these particular discussions, we would basically like to highlight the entire, the development of 20th century's world politics, and how in the 20th centuries this United States of America became successful in hegemonizing, the entire world, for which in the post-Cold War phenomena, the world became unipolar in characters. But at the same time, along with this unipolar world order, this multipolarity, the concept of new emerging world order also came to existence. But nevertheless, we cannot ignore this US-centric development. We cannot ignore the US dominance. We cannot ignore the hegemonic characters of the United States of America and the entire 20th century. So in this particular discussions, basically highlighted, the significant development of this US hegemony in the entire 20th century. So at first, I'd like to start my analysis with that particular statement in 1941 provided by Time magazines, that announcement, that arrival of the American century. So it's very much critical, because that this is something instigative in characters. In 1941, this Time magazine announced the arrival of the American century by analyzing this American engagement in during the time of First World War, as well as in the Second World War as well. The indirect help, indirect engagement of United States of America in the last part of First World War and in the entire part of Second World War. There's some sort of analysis came into existence, and this one of the analysis was that in 1941 conducted by Time magazines, and they announced that this is the real time of arrival of American century. So it is something instinctive, which provoked Japan to attack, this Pearl Harbor in 1941, in the same year. Because during that period, these both countries act their imperial characters. In 20th centuries, this United States of America and Japan were the two imperial forces in the entire world. The kind of imperialism showed by other European countries in 18th and 19th centuries, namely Germany, France, United Kingdom, slowly and gradually they get declined, and these new imperial forces came into the forefront in the form of Japan and United States of America. So it's a direct contrast between this United States of America and Japan, in terms of, hegemonizing, in terms of dominating. It's a part of the world politics. So in that way, this politics gradually diluted. It is worth mentioning that we can say that these earlier European great powers, which namely this France, Germany, Russia, this Russia, they got engaged in the two, this both First and Second World War. They could see their futures was shaped by United States of America. Because slowly and gradually, every kind of developments become US-centric development. In 1945, this US stood alone as the only major industrial power not devastated by war. Because after the dropping of these two atom bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan also became a kind of, status quo. The Japan became a status quo state. Earlier, the Japan was considered to be a revisionist state, but after this dropping of these two atom bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Japan became a status quo state. For example, this again, this in the context of Germany as well. Earlier during the time of Adolf Hitler, during the time of Second World War, Japan was a kind of revisionist. Germany was a revisionist state, but immediate after the end of Second World War, Germany also became total silent. So that is a transformation of the character of the state from revisionism to status quo, which also played a very significant role in the US politics and the anti-global politics as well. So this high-tech army with this nuclear weapon, it's become a kind of matter of concern during that period. Specifically, specifically this announcement of United States of America by dropping two atom bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this United States of America become more prevalent, become more dominating in characters in the world politics. In the Second World War, the other alliance partners greatly they dependent on US military machines, which I have already told you regarding these Soviet soldiers that won battles. For example, the Soviet soldiers who won the great battles in the Eastern Front relied on US land-based trucks. And in the Western Front, America directly supported United Kingdom in 1944 and 1945. So these are some sort of glaring examples of engagement of, US militaries, US armies, during the time of Second World War. After the World War, these new global institutions born immediately after that shaped and dominated by the US. US tried to create USA version of collective security and labor economic relations. Whenever it's a kind of new international economic order, whether it's a question of this collective security, if you're talking about this United Nations organization, the concept of Security Council within the banner of United Nations organization, the initial phases, it's a kind of total dominance of this United States of America within the parameters of United Nations organizations. And the basic logic was that whether it's a Security Council, whether it's General Assembly, whether the entire mechanisms of United Nations organization, the maximum amount of funds they get from this United States of America. So obviously it's become a kind of US-centric model. But during the time of Cold War, immediate after the end of Second World War, this Cold War started between United States of America and Russia. So to some extent, during the time of Cold War, this Russia act like a kind of a protector, a kind of counter against this US aggressions. Because during that period, the strategic location of Russia at the doorsteps of America's fellow liberal democracies in Western and Central Europe, USSR had some amount of advantages during that period. But that problem again overcome by United States of America by offering lot of help to Afghan soldiers in terms of their guerrilla warfare during the time of USS's intervention in Afghanistan to make that particular event as like this Vietnam War. So there's a kind of counter retaliations are going on during the time of Cold War phenomena, but nevertheless US continues to be dominated in that part as well. Then this Marshall Plan after the World War for providing support to the Western and Eastern Europe through military subsidies. So in that way as well, again, United States of America strategically become more dominating in this part of the world. And with that, this initiative, this Europe can able to recover soon. So in the European context, the United States of America became the sole interpreter. Then during the time of Ronald Reagan, again, the kind of policies he applied, which we have already discussed, regarding the offering of this guerrilla warfare techniques, the United States of America plays a very significant role. So in different way, in different occasions, this United States of America hegemonized the entire 20th century. After that, in 1980s, this Gorbachev's on the basis of Gorbachev perestroika and glasnost, this USSR got destabilized, and Russia remained remaining stockpile of USSR and other countries, namely Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, they got independence. So this USSR no longer relevant, and in that particular viewpoint, that exactly happened the world into a unipolar world order in true sense of the term. Apart from this, this economic dominance and this, this military advantages, from cultural viewpoint as well, United States of America became successful in hegemonizing the entire world. So, for example, the cultural enforcement through media like MTV, CNN, these channels become more, popular. It's a question of Western stereotype, and this United States of America leading from the front, in front of the world people, world masses. It's a kind of stereotyping. It's a kind of phobia. People would like to believe only this US-centric news, US-centric development. People love to follow US-centric, the way of life. So that is a kind of, cultural enforcement. Because hegemony is not necessarily is a kind of direct dominance. Hegemony is a kind of acceptance. So directly, indirectly, each and every part of the world, the people accepted this U.S. hegemonic behavior from economic viewpoint, political viewpoint, militaristic viewpoint, social science viewpoint, this cultural viewpoint as well. In terms of social science, this United States of America invested a lot of funds in different parts of the world in terms of studying society as well. So, for example, in the context of India, this CSDS, Center for the Study of Developing Society, it's a part of this is the finest examples of this US-centric development, because during the time of this establishment of the Center for the Study of Developing Societies, for the first time, this eminent political scientist Rajni Kothari, in the context of India, it was established during the time of then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, and fund came from United States of America. So this US also invests a lot of fund in terms of studying the developing societies as well. So they try to understand each and every aspect of life of the individual in different parts of the world, and it's become a kind of US-centric development, US-centric way of life. Everything become US-centric in characters. So that is one kind of aspects on the basis of which we can able to understand how United States of America managed to hegemonize everything, and people accept everything. And after the breakdown of USSR, a lot of things happened in the world politics, And foremost among them, we have this class of civilizations. Then we have this end of ideology, and this greatest book written by this Francis Fukuyama, that is the end of history and enlightenment. So these things develop. This Samuel P. Huntington's class of civilizations, then Francis Fukuyama's this end of history, and Daniel Bell this end of ideology. These three things happen parallelly in a post-Cold War phenomena, that means in the post-1990s. So another era also developed during that period, and in that particular critical situations, this Lebow and Stein in 1994, they developed a concept of triumphalism in a book called We All Lost the Cold War. That means, according to Lebow and Stein, the United States of America became triumphant in hegemonizing the entire 20th century and establishing unipolar world order after the breakdown of USSR. And that is the reason why they say that we all lost Cold War. That means, if Cold War continues to be, relevant, even after this 1990s, it may not be the triumphalism of this United States of America, but after the breakdown of USSR, Russia remained, the supreme stockpile and no longer relevant to counter with this US-centric development or US economy, and slowly and gradually, economically, militaristically, and from other viewpoint as well, United States of America become more dominating in characters, and in that way, in the 20th century, they can able to hegemonize the things. After that, in different parts of the world, the post-Cold nationalist movement took place. That means, after the Cold War, the different sorts of, nationalist movement. Sometimes, in some part of the world, it can be considered a protected social conflict. As a part of, social constructivism, different sorts of nationalist movement developed. Social movement developed. Protected social conflict developed. And in some part, it can be considered as a part of class of civilizations. There are increased number of incidents of conflict between state actors and non-state actors in the post-Cold War phenomena. So that is one kind of areas as a result of this US hegemony. Then, along with these things, we also need to understand how this America can able to hegemonize in each and every aspect of social life, each and every aspect of the human being in each and every part of the world, economically, politically, militaristically. The logic is very much simple, because this America invests a lot of money. Because after the end of Second World War, the America remained, the supreme stockpile of everything, supreme interpreter of everything. They became the largest economic, the entire world. So they can invest money in the administrative field, they can invest their money in a militaristic field, they can invest their money in economic field, in aiding and assistance programs of other parts of the world as well. So in that way, this America invests a lot of money to increase its military capabilities as well, because to become a dominant forces, this militaristic capacity is also very much significant. So by investing a lot of fund, this United States of America, they conducted a lot of military research and development as well. This developmental research, this military research, is very much significantly developed in the United States of America. So that is one kind of area, and as a result of which this American warplanes, specifically pilotless weapons such as Predator drone, it plays a very significant role in in terms of grabbing, in terms of hegemonizing the things. So in different way, by investing a lot of fund, by assisting, by aiding, by collaborating, by suppressing, by offering benefits, by dictating, by dominating, this United States of America, hegemonizing the entire 20th century. But does this mean that US could conquer China or Russia? or even India or Indonesia. Because in a post-Cold War phenomena, along with this unipolar world order, that is a part of new world order, but since this globalization came into existence, so this new emerging world order also came into existence. And in that context, there's some sort of impression also showed by middle-level powerful countries as well. And those middle-level powerful countries, so the kind of impression they showed, they formed the basis of this multipolar world order. But the very concept of this multipolarity that is used for the first time by this Chinese premier, this Jiang Zemin in 1992 in their foreign policy. And after that, and they use this particular word in the foreign policy after this US intervention in, this Iraq in 1991 during the time of liberation movement of Kuwait. So this politics has been diluted from 1990s, and the last decade of 20th century shows, a lot of intervention from US viewpoint, and also showed, the development of a lot of protected social conflict, the development of different sorts of, nationalist movement in different parts of the world. They show different sorts of, classes between state and non-state actors, which regarded by, some analysts as a class of civilization, some regarded as the end of history and end of ideology. So those things need to be debatable. But along with this, US developmental process, this US dominance in the end of the 20th century, should they able to continue the dominance in the 21st centuries? We have, a lot of questions in front of us. Because, along with this United States of America in the 21st centuries, the other developmental countries also came into the forefront. The China become, the largest economy in the 21st centuries by, attracting the highest number of foreign direct investment from 2005 onwards. That means from 2005 onwards, it was China who continuously occupied the topmost position in terms of foreign direct investment. So, this sort of, different sorts of impressions showed by this middle-level powerful countries, specifically from Asian viewpoint. We have these three dominating and prospecting countries, namely China, Indonesia, and India, because they're huge populous countries. But whether it's a kind of bandwagon rather than a balance, it's a time will prove it. So with this word, I'd like to conclude my discussions in terms of US hegemony. My entire effort is basically to highlight how this United States of America became successful in hegemonizing the entire 20th century according to their own wishes. So with this word, I'd like to conclude my lecture, and in the next class we start with the next class we'll start a new topic, that is on global security, because in the wake of this this coronavirus, the critical situation, the spread of this coronavirus and this pandemic, this COVID-19, we are extremely becoming more vulnerable. We are extremely residing in a vulnerable world, and as a important subject of your syllabus, that is global security, in the next class we'll deliberately delve to it. How in 20th and 21st century, specifically in 21st centuries, new security challenges came into the forefront. How the security dilemmas increases. One of the significant development in terms of this global insecurity, that is this health insecurity. But along with this health security and insecurity, some other security aspects as well. So in the next class we'll discuss on this global security issues. So with this word, I'd like to conclude my lectures. So thank you very much. Stay safe and stay home. Thank you.